Lisa Reba here. We've heard all about how the colonies developed and grew. We heard about the French and Indian War and the fact that that cost King George a lot of money in trying to protect his English colonies over in the New World. King George III needs money. Where's he going to get it from? Well, he feels like the colonies need to pay their fair share. After all, he's defended them. He sent his soldiers over there. He's their leader. He has the right to ask them for money. So he starts off with the Stamp Act of 1765. The Stamp Act was an act that required you to purchase a stamp for paper goods that you might buy. Things like legal documents, newspapers, even playing cards. You had to pay a stamp on it. Very unpopular act. Many protests by colonists. Some peaceful, just complaining. And some a little bit more violent, tarring and feathering stamp agents, making effigies of the stamp agent, hanging it up and sending it afire. They were not happy. The act was repealed a year later. King George III, though, did not feel like these colonists could push him around. So next came the Townshend Act of 1767. This act was put together by Charles Townshend, who was in the Parliament of King George III. It involved a tax on some imported goods such as wool, tea, paper goods, and the colonists were required to pay this tax. The colonists didn't get a say in this, as they didn't get a say in the Stamp Act. This was all put together in Parliament thousands of miles away in England. After that came the Tea Act of 1773. And what this involved was a British tea company, the East India Company, and they were now the suppliers of all the tea in the colonies. So even if you had your own store and you had to buy your tea through the company, pay the tax on it, and then sell that. Very, very unpopular. Some of the reactions of the colonists were to boycott. That was a very peaceful action. And they would brew their own Liberty tea, their Patriot tea. And this was their way of saying, no, we're not going to buy this. And then, of course, there were some more vigorous protesting, such as the Boston Tea Party. We'll talk about that another time. Next, we had the Coercive Acts, as they were said by King George III. That's what he called them. The colonists called them the Intolerable Acts. And their reasoning was these weren't things that they felt like they should have to deal with. The first one was the Quartering Act. And the Quartering Act involved the citizens of the colonies, especially Boston, because this was leveled at them. The citizens of Boston had to house and feed soldiers. They did not have a say in this. It's just something they had to do. Second, General Thomas Gage, a British general, was put in charge. He was now the leader in charge of, everyone had to answer to him, of Boston. He was not an elected official by anyone in Boston, anyone in Massachusetts. He was assigned there and given the power by King George III. The third was the Port Act. The Port Act was part of the Coercive Acts, the Intolerable Acts as they were called by the colonists, and the Port Act closed the port of Boston. That's a problem for the people of Boston. They can no longer now ship their goods out, so that affects their livelihood. If they're not shipping goods out, they're not being paid, and they can no longer get goods in. So the citizens of Boston were really suffering under this. There was a shortage of food and of goods that they needed. So right now we've got a situation where King George III has put together some acts to help run things in his colonies, and the colonists are not very happy. So we'll have to see what comes next.